All right, my dude. So you got to stop saying you can't do something, even if it's you in front of El Toro or a spot that looks very scary. You gotta break the habit of automatically writing yourself off. And it's not because, and it's not because I would say you are you are capable of doing whatever obstacle is in front of you, but it's more of, breaking that negative self-talk, because how you speak is a reflection of what you're thinking mentally. And if you're already at the speaking phase where you're saying, oh, I can't do that, or I can't do this, then you're already, it shows, or it tells me and everyone else that that's how you're thinking internally when you're approaching, practicing and even learning new tricks. It's not to say, we can't have doubts, or we can't have a mindset that's more scarce, but it's just about always making sure that the abundant mindset and a more positive self-talk is present, so that it can overcome the negative mindset. And so real quickly, I want to share a story that I had with the student. We were going to a ledge, and I asked him, oh, let's try to ollie up this, let's try, we're gonna see how you do. And before, the first things that came out of his mouth was, oh, I can't do that. And that made me think, now we're definitely gonna try this, because I wanted him to prove to himself that he's closer than he thinks mentally, because he straight off just said, I can't. And so the issue isn't just, it's not really like, oh, he has to learn this trick, or he has to do this obstacle, but it's more of, I thought about when he's by himself skating, he's already skating through the park and saying, oh, I can't do that, I can't do this. So he's pretty much blocking himself from the opportunity to progress. And so what I did, we went to the spot and I told him, okay, give this a try and keep this in mind. And I also told him, don't be thinking you can't. I want you to say instead, oh, I haven't done that yet. And that's more of a that's a reflection of, I'll get to it when I want to, or when I feel ready, right? But it's not completely writing it off. So that's better than saying, oh, I can't do that, and not even looking at the obstacle. So point is, he landed the trick, he even ollied onto it. I thought he was just going to get super close, but he ollied onto it, and so that was even a big win. And after he did that, I reminded him that, you see why you can't write yourself off? Sometimes you're capable of more than you think. So essentially what I'm trying to say is, you can't let yourself get defeated before you even try. You have to at least give it a try, and learn through that process. And so essentially, when it comes down to you applying it to your own skateboarding, maybe you're here at a basketball court and you're just gonna skate flat, right? You're just doing your normal tricks, kick flip, shove it, top shove it, whatever it is. I want you to think about, what are some tricks you're avoiding because you automatically write yourself off. Some of those tricks for me in the past would have been like a switch backside heel, switch big spin. What else? Like a switch hard flip. But it wasn't until I started to think, maybe it's not that I can't do those things. It's more of, I haven't even really gave it a shot. Think about how long it took you to learn your first kickflip, or, how long it took you to land that trick you really wanted, that you at one point thought was like pretty much impossible for you. It took time, it took effort, it took some like mental battles, physical battles. Maybe you even got hurt. Regardless, you got to it, and that's pretty much how you have to approach a new trick. You might already be so stuck in a circle of doing the same tricks over and over again. So other tricks that are kind of different, or variations that are different, might seem impossible, but it's not. It's really just about making sure you're able making sure you're not closing yourself off to those opportunities. So maybe in this session, I'm not gonna do a switch back heel. maybe I am, but regardless, I can slowly make my way there. So I can practice just riding switch, right? Riding switch, making sure that's comfortable. Switch ollies, switch 180. Working my way towards that goal instead of just being like, nah, I can't even try it. Like, why even bother? You know what I mean? It doesn't mean you're gonna land it that day you go for it, or maybe even soon, but it just means you're on your way. You're not closing off that road that leads to, you know, a goal that you didn't even think you could reach, or progression that you didn't see yourself accessing. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times we get so stuck in we get limited in our approach with skateboarding because we just go in circles. Pretty much we do the same tricks, we do the same routine, same skate park, same self-talk in our head. And this is pretty much I guess a reminder that you continuously have to add on to that talk in a way where you're going to be discovering, you're going to you approach skateboarding slightly creative, where you try different tricks even if they feel off. You know, like for me, doing switch heel flips they still don't feel comfortable, right? But I could do them off of a fair set, like a fair size set. And that's not because I'm good at them. It's just because I've allowed myself I've allowed that possibility to be a reality. You know, in the past, I would quickly write myself off and just be like, yeah, that's just not a trick I do, right? Instead, I'm gonna do switch flip, right? But it's not about having some tricks better than others, but it's more about making sure that you're always working, giving some attention to your weaknesses instead of just being like, nah, that's not for me. You know, because maybe, yeah, you won't be able to do certain tricks off of obstacles that are, you know, big obstacles, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't give them a try to at least enjoy them on flat. Or, like I said, give that some time, so that maybe you don't do a switchback heel off some stairs, but you do a switch ollie or switchback 180 because you've practiced the fundamentals that will allow you to eventually get a switchback heel. You know, so essentially you're giving yourself the ability to access more variety with your skateboarding instead of just staying stuck in a cycle like I mentioned already. So stop saying you can't do things, because that's limiting your opportunity to progress. Not saying you can progress, I'm just saying you're pretty much capping yourself. So right now, you know, I mentioned not writing yourself off of certain tricks. One of those tricks that I've written myself out, just completely say I can't do it, is something like an inward heel, right? Or something like a nollie inward heel. And that was the talk for a couple years. I would say like a good 10 years for me. And it wasn't until recently that, I guess because I practiced just nollies, you know, nollie shoves, more basic tricks in a nollie sense, and also like hop shove-its were improved. I guess somewhere along the line, I just built a better foundation to actually go for inward heels and nollie inward heels. Now, like I said, it's not like I'm doing them off of big stairs or in lines, but it's still a trick that I can possibly defend on a game of skate. And so that's a cool reality that I am able to experience, because I didn't currently write myself off of learning that trick. And so sometimes it's not about saying, it's not about looking at something and saying you can't do it and that you have to. Like, I'm not saying to look at things and be like, oh yeah, one day I could do that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, you know, think about what are the steps you need to take at a fundamental level where you can slowly prepare yourself to, or improve your chances of doing a trick that you would normally write yourself off of. You know what I mean? So for example, if I'm looking at, let's see, like a rail over there, you want to point to, I mean, look at the rail. If I'm looking at that rail and I'm saying, if I approach it and I'm like, oh yeah, I can't do this, I'm just writing myself off of learning more board, or improving on board slides, or, you know, improving on the pop that I need to do that rail. Instead, what you can do as a skateboarder with a more abundant mindset is to think, what would I need to practice, or what would I need to improve on in my current ability, or even at a fundamental level, so that I have an improved chance of doing that board slide if I decide to go for it. You know, it doesn't mean I need to skate it. It doesn't mean that I have to board slide anything, you know, that looks like that. All I'm saying is you have to allow those challenges to make you think about how you can progress in other ways, right? Maybe I can practice getting onto higher flat bars. Maybe I can practice taking board slides the distance. Maybe I can practice just doing a regular board slide with more speed, because I need more speed to approach that rail. You see, these are things that I start to think about, and regardless if I do the trick or not, it's gonna allow me to improve as a skateboarder, because I'm adding variety. I'm adding I'm adding more challenges to it, you know, whereas before I probably wouldn't have thought about skating board flat bars with more speed. You get what I'm saying? So it has you thinking about factors or situations that you can prepare for in the future, so that when you go to a rail or even a spot that, you know, requires more speed or requires more pop and more confidence, you are a bit more prepared. This is why, you know, this kind of on the side of the topic, but this is why adding variety to skateboarding, regardless of what your preference is very helpful, because, you know, things are translatable, you know, at a fundamental level. If you know how to frontside air on the quarter pipe, can you get off your board? It's like the squeak. If you can frontside air on the quarter pipe, chances are that you have some sort of idea of how to frontside 180 on flat ground, and vice versa. If you can frontside 180 on flat ground or on a bank, chances are that you have a better you know, you have a better reference point to how to do it on a quarter pipe. So like I said, it helps to kind of dabble in a lot of different tricks, you know, styles of skateboarding, and maybe even, you know, board sizes or tools that you can use to progress. Point is, you can't write yourself off. You can't, I'm saying can't a lot. You shouldn't, you know, be writing yourself off of potential, like the opportunity to progress in that way. So anyways, having said that, I just wanted to quickly say, you know, talk about that experience with the student, and also elaborate on it a bit. But if you're interested in any one-on-one at a skate park, or even online, and by online I mean like through the phone or through Zoom, you know, you can hit me up at profe.carlos, and we'll talk about what that looks like for you. Other than that, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.